Rob.
Tony. And I'm Jeff.
We're in gaming.
And that's you.
Hello gamers and welcome back to the Inn. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshack if you want to call me by my Hearthstone name, and today we'll be doing our first arena tip video. So if this one's a little wonky or I don't cover everything I need to cover or I leave something out, let me know. Again, it's our first one, so I'm kind of just going by the ropes here. I have a small outline of kind of what I think is most important to talk about first, as this is kind of going to be like a basic fundamental video of arena and how to do better at it. If this video does well and you guys do enjoy it, I don't mind doing progression videos talking about more individual specific kind of classes and which cards to pick with those in the drafting phase of arena and maybe how to play those classes. But covering everything about arena in just one video would be like a 3-hour long video and we just don't have the time, and that would be insane for me to talk for that long. So this video is just going to be pretty much, here's my outline. I'll just give you an insight of what we're gonna talk about. So why is arena good? Just a little rundown of why would you even want to do arena, which hero to pick, which ones are the best, and which ones are, to aim for if you're newer, what cards to draft. This isn't more so specific cards to draft in specific decks. This is more so like, for an example, your first card pick in arena probably isn't as important as your last 10. And we're gonna talk about why and kind of what to go for, like when you're in the stages of drafting, what should you be looking for. From there, we're going to talk about like the minion drops, so 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop minions, how they're all how they all kind of revolve around each other in respect to the arena. Obviously, a 2 drop is probably way more, well, it is way more important than a 1 drop, and then why is that true? So we're gonna just talk about pretty much fundamentals, basics about arena, maybe some stuff you didn't know, and for those of you who are new to arena, some stuff that you definitely need. This is insight that you need before you even hop in arena, because it's a lot different than ranked play. Ranked play, you build your deck, you know what the fuck you're playing, your deck has an archetype, and you go for that win condition. And arena changes every time. So after that, we're going to talk about deck curves. So when you're building a deck, what curve are you aiming to build with the cards that are given, and then what that curve relates to a specific kind of deck. And then we're just going to talk about some general strategies, and this isn't too much. They're not too advanced. It's just pretty much basic stuff that we talk about during our free-to-play videos anyway, but we're just going to talk about them a little off on their own. So without even having to probably say, this video is going to be a bit longer. I'm sorry about that, but there is a lot of stuff to cover, and I'm gonna do my best to cover it in just one run, and that's normally how I do my videos. I don't like cut it up into a bunch of pieces and whatnot. So anyway, off the bat, why is arena good, why you should do it, and kind of what is arena. So off the bat, for a new player, if this is you, you pay 150 gold or you pay $2 and you can enter into arena. There's 9 classes in the game currently, so you can the game gives you the option to pick between 3 classes, whether it be, for an example, hunter, priest, and warrior are the classes it gives you when you enter arena. You can pick between these classes. After you pick your class that you're going to play out of the 3 it provided, you're going to be brought up with 3 cards. You can pick any of the 3 cards it provides, and you're going to do this 30 times until you have a deck of 30 cards. The cards in the deck can range from common to legendary. It all depends on how lucky you are. But most of the time in arena, every player gets basically the same kind of leveled deck. Some players in arena, you get that really lucky draft run where you get 2 legendaries or something like that. This is very uncommon. So everybody's basically on the same playing field, which is really, really nice for newer players, because if you go into ranked and you don't have all the cards needed for your deck, you're gonna get destroyed by someone playing, let's say, a tier 1 deck, and you're still playing commons, depending on the situation, of course. So that's a little about arena. Why it's good: this provides newer players a way to kind of get better at the game and learn how to build a deck and what cards are good, how to use them. They get to play they have the ability to play whatever deck they want and not be punished based on the cards they have in their collection. It's a great way to get you automatically get a pack for doing arena, so there's 100 gold refunded, and then the 50 gold is left off to the side. So for those who can't really get past 2 or 3 wins and they feel like it's just a money pit because you could be spending your rest of your gold getting just packs, you're losing out on the ability and the techniques and kind of lessons you learn through playing arena, whether it be value plays, what cards are good in certain decks, playing different classes, and then everybody also playing on the same scale, because no one person's deck is going to be so much better than the others, again, unless that person got really lucky with their draft pick. And then also you have the ability to make a profit. So if you go from, like, I believe it's 7 wins is what you normally aim to get to make a profit, you can actually earn gold and dust in Arena and turn profit, so you can craft more cards and use your gold to buy more packs if you do well in Arena, which is what we've been doing on our free-to-play account. And it's why that account has progressed so much. So why is Arena good? What is Arena? We've covered those. So heading into, okay, so the first thing you're going to do in Arena is pick your hero. Normally, for beginner players, they want to pick whatever they're most comfortable with. But for those of you who want to play the best classes in Arena, what you want to aim for is Paladin, which is probably by far the best right now, followed very, very closely, if not the same as Mage. So Paladin and Mage, fantastic in Arena. These are, I guess we can say why those exact classes are the best in our more specific video. But just keep in mind, Mages have Flame Strike, Paladins have Divine Shield. Both of those make for very valuable plays and trades. After that, I would say, not by much, but still a very powerful, probably tier 1 deck in Arena is the Rogue. It's a little bit harder to play in my experience, so if you're looking for a very standard, easy deck to play in Arena, Mage is going to be your best bet. If you don't have Mage, Paladin is following it up. Still a pretty simple deck to play, and it does very, very well. Rogue, again, a little bit harder, but if you want the challenge, Rogue is there. It's still a very powerful deck. Those are your 3 best decks in Arena as of now. This is before the standard update, by the way, guys. When the standard format update comes out, I'm probably going to update this video because there's going to be a lot of changes, and some of these classes may or may not be in the tier 1, 2, or 3 list. And so again, Paladin, Mage, Rogue, tier 1 list. For my tier 2 list, I have Hunter, Druid, Shaman, Warlock, Priest. All of these pretty consistent. They all do about the same. There's not one that's trumping over the other one, but I mean, the difference between Paladin, Mage, and Rogue and Hunter, Druid, Shaman, Warlock, Priest, I mean, there's a definite gap in between how good those decks are in Arena. So I think tier 2 is where we put those classes. And then the last class, poor Warrior, is going to be tier 3. So if you're new to Arena, just don't pick fucking Warrior. It's not a deck you're going to do very well with. Not like the decks just normally don't do well on their own unless you're very familiar with Arena, like Crip or maybe Hafu or some other of these streamers who solely focus on Arena, and they can pick a Warrior and still do very well. I picked a Warrior and I think we got to 5 or 6 wins. That's okay, but if we would have maybe picked, Mage, Paladin, or Rogue, we could have gone to maybe 8 or 9. So just keep that in mind. Those are kind of the classes you want to aim to get. Well, again, if you're looking for specifics on those decks and why they're good and what cards to draft, leave a comment and say what deck you want to see, and I'll go over that in a future video when we kind of progress through Arena and go into more advanced tips, specific classes, and what cards you basically want to pick for those classes. And I don't mind going over all of that. It's just, again, we kind of want to take these videos one step at a time, and let's learn the foundation, what's good first, and then go from there. I'm going to get a drink of water before I die. All right, so we have which cards to draft. This is, again, not exactly what cards for each class are the best, but more so during the draft, what are you aiming to get? So first 10 cards in your draft, you basically want to go for whatever is the better card out of the 3. So example, let's say you have like a Chillwind Yeti. That always comes to mind because it was one of the best 4-drops for the longest time. It's a 4-drop, 4/5, no ability. It's just a nice body on the board. Or you have, let's say, like a River Croc. Let's say you have 3 4-drops already, and Chillwind Yeti comes up, and you have no 2-drops, and a River Croc comes up. Even though you have no 2-drops, and that's and you 4/4 or 3 or 4 4-drops already, Chillwind Yeti is the better pick, because it's the better value of the card. So in your first 10 cards, you want to go for whatever just the better pick is. And normally a good note to go by is if the card is found in ranked play, it's probably really good. So you should probably put that in your deck. For example, Blessings of the King over like not a Divine Favor, but like Argent Squire. Argent Squire probably not played as much. If you don't have any 1-drops in your deck, probably not that big of a deal. But if you have like Blessings of the King, it's a 4-drop. It's seen in Arena, or not Arena, but in Ranked a lot. It's almost in every Paladin deck, so probably go with the Blessings of the King. So if you see cards in Ranked and you get them in Arena draft, those are probably cards to look at. Your next 10 cards, so this is anywhere between 10 to 20, is to see what cards you currently have built in your deck and maybe sway your pick based on some possible combos you could see in the future. So if you have like 2 or 3 cards that grant a silence ability or grant a taunt ability next to it, maybe the Watcher card, the 2-drop 4/5 that can't attack, is maybe a better choice than some other cards you have, unless those other cards are obviously much better value. Matt's staring at me from afar. So just keep that in mind. Always look at your deck and see what you have to what kind of possibilities you could get from in the future. Oh, Matt messed me up. He's giving me looks in the corner. Let's ignore him. All right, and then your last 10 cards I think is the hardest cards to pick, because this is going to wrap up your deck. This is basically putting the bow on the present. Even if it takes you, I wrote down a note here, like let's say there's no timer in Arena and how long it takes you to pick your card. So anywhere, if it takes you 10 seconds to pick a card, or 3 minutes or 5 minutes to pick a card, take all the time you need, build the best possible deck you can, and just pay attention to your curve, what cards are in the deck, what combinations you could see, and what you think would work together. And there's also, I believe, tier lists that you can look up on Google that will have good cards to aim for, but most of the time this doesn't go by what your current deck is. It just says the general cards to get, so maybe sometimes the cards on those tier lists aren't actually the best cards to get based on the current deck you currently have. Based on the deck you currently have. There's dogs walking around now. Sorry guys, being a little distracted. So now we're going to talk about, now that we went over kind of like during the draft what cards to pick between like 1 and 10, 10 to 20, and then 20 to 30. Hopefully I kind of went over what you need to look for in each one of those stages. Now we're going to talk about when you're picking a card, what does that card mean? So normally the 1-drops, and by 1-drops I mean a minion that costs 1 mana, are normally pretty bad. The only exclusions to this I can come up with are maybe Abusive Sergeant, which is normally not played on 1. He's played in combination with another creature to make a value trade that you couldn't make before. For those of you who don't know what Abusive Sergeant is, he says give a battle cry, give a minion +2 attack. So your 1 or 2 attack creature can become a 4 attack creature and possibly kill a card much stronger than it. So Abusive Sergeant allows you to make trades you probably weren't able to make, and he only costs 1 mana. So he's good. Also, Zombie Chow is also a great 1-drop, and that's pretty much it for the 1-drops. If you come across like Worgen, I think he has stealth, he's a 2/1, he's all right too, but for the most part, don't worry too much about 1-drops. They're not gonna make or break games. But moving to 2-drops, these guys will make or break games. I think the 2-drop is the most important slot in a arena deck, and we'll go over that in detail here. So, basically, 2-drops are your early bread and butter in the deck. You wanna aim to have at least, in my opinion, 6 to 10. 6 is probably on the lower side. 10 is a little bit high, but in this situation, it's almost better to be safe than sorry, because if you do not have a turn 2 play, this is so detrimental in Arena, because Arena, you mostly will have like 80 to 90% creatures in your deck and only 10% spells, and this means that you do not have field clear unless you're playing a mage, which those guys, you can make some exceptions. Most decks can't handle when your opponent overwhelms the field. If you're playing ranked, you obviously can put cards in your deck because you could choose and you can put field clear in there, but for Arena, you don't have that option. You may end up with no field clear in your deck the entire time, which makes you have to use your creatures to then kill off your opponent's creatures, and if you can't play a creature until turn 3 or 4, you're already being swarmed by 3 of your opponent's creatures. So the 2-drop is the most essential, in my opinion, part of the Arena draft. You have to make sure you have good 2-drops, and then we'll talk about kind of which 2-drops to go for. There's 2 types of 2-drops. There's a 2-drop with 2 attack and 3 HP, or there's a 2-drop with 3 attack and 2 HP. So it's either a 3/2 or a 2/3. And there's a lot of arguments in between these two, which one is better in Arena. Normally, and like I would want to say 65 to 70% of the time, the 2/3 is actually the better card. So like Flame Juggler is a really nice card in Arena. And this is because most 1-drops that have 2 attack can trade with the 2-drop that's a 3/2, so they can make the value trade there. But if the 2-drop has 3 HP, it can actually kill a 1-drop without having to worry about it dying, which is, again, a value trade. You are getting rid of your opponent's card, and it's not costing you anything, and your opponent is losing a card. So they have to waste another card to get rid of it, unless they hero power, which then wastes mana, which they lose tempo. So depending on which 2-drops, whether you have the option of a 3/2 or a 2/3, most of the time, again, 2/3s are nice, but if you get like a Knife Juggler, you can't really beat out that 2-drop. He's insane. Pick Knife Juggler. And then that pretty much covers it for 2-drops. I think we went over that. Very important to the deck. Having, 10 of them, don't worry about it. If your curve looks like a fucking giant 2-drop line, It's okay. Don't worry about it. 2-drops are awesome. Don't go crazy though. Don't put fucking 15 2-drops in your deck. Understand that 10 is good. 6 is probably a little bit low. 20 is too much. Okay, so for 3-drops, some people overrate these or underrate these. In my opinion, they're not as crucial as some other drops like 2, because on turn 3, most 2-drops can trade with 3-drops. So if you only have a 2-drop on turn 3, you're essentially not really losing anything because your 2-drop can trade with their 3-drop. The exceptions are maybe Spider Tank, Harvest Golem, and the Ogre Brute. Those are some really solid 3-drops, so if those of course pop up in your draft, pick those. But if you have the option between a really solid 2-drop and a really shitty 3-drop, and you have a lot of 2-drops and not so many 3-drops, depending on the situation, maybe even picking the 2-drop is better there, because again, most 2-drops can trade with 3-drops. So yeah, it's like 3-drops are an awkward kind of spot. Talking about the 4-drop creatures, this is your kind of your mid-game power spike. These 4-drops, normally the value in between the 3 and the 4 is huge, as between, you know, the difference between a 2-drop and a 3-drop, not that much, but a difference between a 3-drop and a 4-drop is a lot more than the difference between a 2 and a 3. So when again you think of a 4-drop, you think of a Chillwind Yeti, a 4/5 body. This guy can trade with any 3-drop and pretty much kill it and still be alive. As we know, most 2-drops can kill a 3-drop, and most 3-drops cannot kill a 2-drop and stay alive. So just keep that in mind, that the 4-drops, very important cards in the deck. Chillwind Yeti, Dark Iron Dwarf. There's a couple others that are really nice, but pretty much Chillwind Yeti and Dark Iron Dwarf are the ones that come to mind. Shield Master is another one that comes to mind that are really, really good. So make sure you get a decent amount of 4-drops, make sure they're high quality minions, and if you're lacking on your 2s and 4s, that's a big deal. 2s and 4s important, 3-drops not so important, 1-drops not so important. Not to say that they're not important at all, but you know, just know what is crucial in the deck and know what isn't. Your 5-drops, they're kind of in the same awkward situation as your 3-drops, because the difference between a 4 and a 5, a lot of 4-drop creatures can trade into a 5-drop and make that trade, and both creatures die. So essentially playing on turn 5, you can play a 2-drop and a 3-drop, that's okay. If you just play a 4-drop, that's normally okay. So 5-drops, again, is kind of in the awkward situation again where it's like the 3-drop of the 5-drops, if that makes sense. So your 3 and 5-drops are kind of awkward. You don't really have to have the best card in there, but you definitely have to have your 2s and 4s. And then your 6-drop plus, this is pretty much your big guns of the deck. You want to essentially have anywhere between 2 to 4 of the bigger type of creatures in your deck. Probably around 3 or 4 is what I would do. North Sea Kraken is really nice. Boulderfist Ogre, I don't know. Boulderfist is just what I call him. He's really, really nice. He's a 6-drop, 6/7. These are kind of the cards you want to aim for when you're looking for 6+, and these can, they definitely matter, and they can make the trades with the 5-drops, again, without dying. So making value trades is essentially what Arena is all about, because you're not winning through win conditions of, you know, let's say Freeze Mage or you Alexstrasza, Double Fireball, Frostbolt. There is none of that in Arena. It is solely being able to draft the better deck than your opponent, even though you might have been, 2 players are given, let's say, the same cards. Both players are going to pick different cards, and the one that, you know, built his deck around what he thought was better and the cards synergize better and he makes more value trades will be the winner in Arena. So just keep that in mind. So we kind of went over about how many 6-drops you want. They are important. So your 3s and 5s, again, not so important. Your 2s and 4s, very important. Your 1-drops, Abusive Sergeants, your Zombie Chows, they're nice. And then your 6-drops, aim for some big ol' stats on the board. Boulder Fist, Stormwind, I believe. Stormwind, not Stormwind Knight. He's Stormwind something. He's a 6-drop, give every other minion +1/+1. He's good as well. Okay. So I'm going to have the deck curves at this point pop up on the screen. This should symbolize Rob, which is me when I'm editing to fucking make it pop up. And I'm looking at exactly what you're looking at now on the side here. And so the first one that pops up is a late game mana curve and your control. So this is going to start off again, maybe a couple 1-drops, probably around 2, 3. A decent amount of 2-drops, as we see in every single one of these decks besides the mid-game mana curve, has around 8 or more. This is because the 2-drop is probably the most important slot in the deck. And then as we see from the late game mana curve, it goes all the way down like a stepping stool, allowing so you can definitely draw into your 2, you then hopefully have a 3, into your 4, into your 5, into your 6, and you actually have a decent amount of 5, 6, and 7 minions, as normally in an Arena deck, it'll look something like your early game mana curve, or maybe your mid game mana curve where it's balanced here, that it kind of looks like a wave, I guess. Anyway, we'll talk about the second one here. So the first one's a control type deck. It should start off really low, start from the highest point, and end up down. As your early game, you'll have a huge amount of 2-drops, a decent amount of 3-drops, an even lower amount of 4-drops, and then after that, your deck pretty much just fizzles out. It basically revolves around you having a good amount of not a good amount of 1-drops, but a decent amount of 1-drops. Probably 3 is a little bit low, probably around, 3 or 4 seems all right. Definitely a lot of 2-drops because you can actually play 2/2 on 4, and then on 5 you can actually play a 2 and a 3, so you're basically being able to play a creature every turn with this early game deck. As the late game, you'll probably play a creature and maybe hero passive a turn or 2. And then for the last one, here's the mid-game mana curve. This is where you're going to, your 4-drops are actually the most powerful in the deck. As the 2-drops are important, you're basically going to build up. Your 3 and your 4-drops are going to be the power spikes in your deck, and then your deck kind of fizzles out, but you still have a decent amount of 6 and a 7-drop in the deck as well. So just pay attention to these curves when you're building a deck. See which one of these it's panning out to be, and then you kind of know what deck you're playing as. So, you know, if you're not really, like, let's say your mana curve ends up being the early mana curve, the aggressive type deck. So you see a lot of 2s, it looks like this, you're like, all right, I'm gonna play this deck as if I was playing a rush type deck. Still make those value trades, but you have a deck archetype in mind, so you have a mindset of how you're going to play this deck. And that all depends, again, here are the curves, and you should use those to your advantage. Again, this is Arena, and you're not going to be able to pick every card that you want, and sometimes you're just going to get really, really, really shitty drafts. My last Arena game that I played, I went 0-3 with a Rogue deck, and I knew it was fucking horrible. I actually conceded. I didn't even go 0-3. I went 0-2, and then I retired it because I just knew it was bad. Stuff happens. You just got to roll with the punches. Just because you get one bad Arena run or a couple bad ones in a row, don't lose faith. The deck is, I mean, not the deck, but the game requires a large quantity of learning. There's a huge kind of learning curve to this game. The more you play it, the more you understand, the more you see, and then you're kind of, when you encounter the same situation multiple times, you can kind of be like, oh, I've seen this before. What is the better play? What did I do last time that didn't work? And what can I do this time to possibly make that play better? So this game, again, it just requires you to kind of think a little bit and to just practice. How else do you get good at something unless you practice? But yeah, sometimes in Arena, you get bad cards, roll with the punches. And then for the general strategy here, we're almost done. I know this is a little bit long. I'm sorry about this, guys, but there's a lot of stuff to go with. And again, if you're looking for, let's say you enjoy this and you're looking for, what, Rob, I really enjoy Paladin Arena. What do I draft if I'm a Paladin? I'll, you know, if I get enough comments that are actually positive like that, I'll do each individual class or whatever the most popular classes are, an in-depth analysis of just that one class in Arena, cards to pick, and then tips to go along with that class. So the general strategy in Arena is to keep your enemy's board clear. This seems pretty self-explanatory, but I've seen a lot of players not, you know, make value trades when they should because they want to go face because they think taking down their life points as quick as possible is the best play. For example, if you're playing against a Paladin, and swinging your 3/3 into his 1/1 may not seem like the best play because, you know, you have a 3-attack creature and killing off just a 1/1 doesn't seem worth it. But then the next turn, he uses a Blessings of King, and Paladins have a lot of cards that allow them to buff their creatures or add Divine Shield, and at that point he can kill your creature, and his creature is still alive, and he made a value trade, and that only happened because you didn't kill the creature to begin with. So you kind of have to, like, with some decks, when you know who you're playing against, snap it into the bud so they don't get the ability to take, you know, advantage of your misplay. So just keep in mind when to clear minions, what value trades look like. Killing his 1/1 with your 3/3, and you're going against a Paladin, probably the best of the moves. Save your removals unless you have more in your hand, and then only realize what creatures need to die. So, for example, let's say you have a Fireball in your hand, and he plays a Chillwind Yeti, and you have a, you know, a 5/4 on the board and 2 3/3s or something like that. So some might, you know, use the Fireball on his Yeti and then keep all his creatures alive. This, in some cases, is the play, but most of the time you don't have a lot of removal spells in Arena. Most of your cards are creatures, and you want to use your creatures to basically make the trades for you as spells would if, you know, you had a lot of them. But this isn't always the case because let's say they play a card that needs to die right away, and you need to kill off 3 of your creatures to kill it. Obviously, then the best mode of or route of action is to use maybe your polymorph or your fireball to get rid of that card. But in most situations, you can lose maybe like 1 creature in your passive to kill one of their guys and save some of your CC, unless you've got like, you know, fucking like 4 fireballs in your hand, then obviously go fireball crazy. But for the most part, think about the play before you make it, see if there's another route of action which you can kind of, again, you want to use your creatures in Arena to basically make your trades, save your CC for when you really need it. And by CC, I mean crowd control effects, whether it be polymorph, flame strike, fireball, frostbolt, Evis, warriors have shield slam. It's just, keep in mind what you have. You don't want to overextend, use all your field clear, and then when, you know, they bring back a huge creature the following turn, you're like, how do I deal with this? But you actually wasted probably something you shouldn't have on a smaller creature that you could have taken care of another way. So I know I went over that a little bit, I actually talked about that a lot, but it's pretty important. I've seen a lot of players make this mistake when they're going into Arena. Just because you have it doesn't mean you should use it. And I believe that was our last one. I have our next tip here is clear board with your minions, not spells, but I kind of added that in with save removals for unless you need to get rid of the minion. Anyway, so that pretty much wraps up our first Arena tip video here. Hopefully you've learned something. These are, again, just pretty much basic foundation ideas behind Arena. There was nothing too advanced in this. We'll go into that more later once we progress through these tip videos. But for now, this is what we got. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you let me know and what you'd like to see in the future. And if you didn't like it, let me know so I never make one of these again. So with that said, guys, as always, I'm Warshack and happy whatever the hell day it is.